A girl was turned into a fish by her very best friend, all because of jealousy. And if she is not seen by true love within 5 days, her soul will vanish forever. Once upon a time, in an African-American community named Umoja, where the spirits of ancestors still whispered in the wind, 2 girls grew up like sisters, Zara and Aira. One carried light, the other darkness. When the powerful King Mandala chose Zara as his bride, a crack tore through their pure friendship. A dark curse, a golden mermaid bearing a human soul, and a child who hears a voice rising from the water. Please save me. This is not just a fairy tale. This is a battle between love, betrayal, and forgiveness. And you won't believe what happened next. The wedding took place under the radiant sunset of Umoja village, where the traditional drums resounded like the heartbeat of the entire community. People danced, sang, and the air was filled with light and the fragrance of a joyful season. At the center of that circle, amidst the clapping and cheering, stood Zara, beautiful as a dream in a traditional wedding dress, hand embroidered with golden thread, her hand tightly clasped in King Mandala's, a man revered not only for his power, but also for his kind heart, eyes as deep as a lake at night, and a smile that could soften even the most barren souls. Aira was there too, wearing a smooth emerald green dress like the leaves of the rainy season, her smile radiant, her eyes sparkling. She danced with the villagers, receiving every congratulation, and was even the first to give Zara a protective charm necklace she had woven herself. No one noticed anything amiss, for Aira was better at hiding than anyone else. But that night, after the final drumbeat, when the village fell silent, the girl sat alone by her window, gazing at the moonlight filtering through the palm trees. The hands that had danced so gracefully now trembled. She smiled in the darkness, a bitter smile, then wept silently. Everyone thought Zara was the worthy one. But no one knew that Aira, too, had once dreamed of ascending the throne beside that king. From childhood, when they were little girls bathing in the river, catching fish, and whispering secrets about the future, Zara had once said, "I just want to marry someone who loves me, even if he's ordinary." But Aira was different. She carried a different desire to see herself at the highest place, to be heard, admired, acknowledged, not out of arrogance, but because she had always been the shadow standing beside Zara's radiant light. Zara was always loved effortlessly. The village elders called her the ray of sunshine. Young men strummed guitars and sang her name under the moonlight. And Aira, though intelligent and agile, was only ever Zara's best friend. And now, after all these years, that name Zara had once again taken something Aira had never dared to voice: her hidden feelings for Mandala. From the moment the king set foot in Umoja village, Aira's heart was no longer the same. She remembered the first time she caught his gaze, a gaze as deep as childhood dreams, a gaze that made her believe he saw her, not Zara. But in the end, as always, all attention turned to her best friend. And this time, the cost was an entire lifetime. Aira began quietly avoiding Zara. Their meetings, once a source of joy, now felt strained. She made excuses, being busy, tired, or simply unable to bear seeing Zara in her royal cloak, hailed by the villagers as the Queen of Kindness. The bitterness didn't come in a rush, but smoldered like a fire in dry straw. Every compliment for Zara, every admiring glance from others, every time King Mandala held her hand as they passed by was a small cut etched into Aira's heart. Eventually, those cuts became a wound too deep to hide. One night, when the village had fallen asleep, Aira stepped out of her hut alone, walking along the path to the Imani River, the sacred river where the ancestors of Umoja were believed to listen to the deepest whispers of the heart. The water was black as ink. The night breeze was cold. Her bare feet sank lightly into the wet sand. She stood there for a long time, neither crying nor smiling. Then she whispered, as if speaking to herself or perhaps to the river, "If she weren't here, then I would have been the queen." The wind rose, carrying the scent of algae and the whispers of the distant forest. No one answered, but in Aira's heart, something had just broken, or perhaps awakened. And that would change everything. Aira could no longer count how many nights had passed since Zara became queen. Those days stretched on like wisps of smoke in a ritual lingering, aimless, and tinged with a bitter scent. By day, she still moved through the village as if everything were fine. But when darkness fell over the thatched roofs, when laughter from the palace echoed as far as the bamboo groves, Aira was left alone, with the sighing wind and the heavy thud of jealousy. Her heart didn't explode with rage. It bled slowly, night by night. The pain didn't scream, but cut gently, persistently. Zara's kindness now felt like an invisible blade. That smile, that gaze, that carefree nature, as if the world had always paved a sunlit path for her. And Aira, silently standing on the sidelines with all her wit, ambition, and loneliness of someone never chosen. The villagers still whispered about a place deep in the swamp where darkness didn't need to hide its face. An old woman lived among rotting grass and mist, able to read the lines of fate in a palm and toy with souls as if they were old coins. Mama Juzu. Her name came with warnings, but it was also the only place Aira thought of when her heart no longer believed in light. She left the village one early morning, when the fog still hung thick like silk over the ground. No one knew where she was going, and she left no word. Her feet carried her south, where the plains gave way to patches of reeds, then to the wet, breathing mud of the swamp. No map, no path. Only a vague belief that darkness would guide those who embraced it. The deeper she went, the thicker the air grew, as if thousands of eyes watched from behind the moss-covered veil. The sun vanished. The wind, through the barren trees, sounded like someone whispering her name. Each step Aira took was a silent dialogue between instinct and reason, between fear and an unnameable desire. The hut appeared behind a cluster of leafless trees, low, black, and shrouded in dense fog. No windows, no light, only gray smoke curling from a chimney twisted like a snake's spine. Aira paused for a moment, not out of fear, but because her palms suddenly turned ice cold, as if her body knew that what was about to happen could never be undone. She knocked on the door 3 times. There was no answer, but the door slowly creaked open, emitting a dry, rasping sound like wood drained of life. Inside, a figure sat motionless before a fire, long, tangled hair spilling to the floor like a curtain blocking any retreat. The smell of smoke, half-burned roots, and dried blood mingled into something indescribable, both intoxicating and nauseating. Without a word, Aira knew it was Mama Juzu. The old woman didn't look at her like a person, but as if peering through her thin layer of flesh to examine her soul. No greetings, no formalities. No need to ask why. Both knew why Aira was there. Mama Juzu rose slowly, moving as if she had no bones. From a rough leather chest, she took a small vial. Inside was an emerald green liquid, not clear, not cloudy, but as if it held a deep swirling vortex. No light shone on it, yet it glowed. No distinct smell, yet it made the heart skip a beat. She said nothing, but Aira understood. This was not poison. This was banishment. A spell that sent a soul to a place no one remembered, no one named. A form of eternal oblivion, living yet unseen, existing yet absent from anyone's memory. Aira took the vial with both hands, gently, as if holding her own fate. Her eyes no longer held light, only the resolve of someone who had gone too far to turn back. Her hand tightened around the pouch, her heart silent, and her feet began the journey back toward the village where Zara still believed the world was a safe place. That night, as the wind blew fiercely from the swamp toward the Amani River, no one heard the faint laughter echoing from the deep forest. And no one knew that a bargain had just been sealed with a loss invisible to the naked eye. All right, my dear audience, today's story will make you gasp. Unbelievable. If you're ready to dive into this magical journey, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing how we're connecting from every corner of the world. No one in the village or the palace knew that someone who once stood silently on the edge of light now carried a shard of pure darkness in her pocket, a force ready to swallow an entire human fate. Aira returned to the village as if she had never left. No one asked questions. She was still gentle, still smiled, still the same old friend. When Zara, accompanied by a small entourage, returned from the palace for the harvest festival, Aira was the first to greet her. There was no divide between queen and villager, only two women who had grown up by the same riverbank, holding hands amidst the whirl of tradition and memories. Zara was as ever radiant, warm, and completely unaware that the world around her was waiting for a single touch to shatter. One late afternoon, as the distant drums rang out and the aroma of roasted corn filled the air, Aira invited her to her small hut. "A tea, like old times," she said, and Zara agreed without a hint of suspicion. How could she suspect? Aira was her sister, her memory, the one who had held her through her first childhood fever. In the quiet hut, with candlelight flickering on the earthen walls, Aira poured 2 cups of fragrant tea from a clay pot. The scent of herbs rose warm and soothing, like the days long ago when they sat together under a mango tree, talking about future weddings and unspoken dreams. Zara raised her cup, smiling a smile so trusting it was heartbreaking. Aira watched her drink it all, then slowly lowered her gaze. No explosion, no smoke. Only a sudden silence, as if time had skipped a beat. In an instant, Zara's face contorted. Her hand trembled slightly. Her eyes widened, then filled with panic. A faint shudder passed through her body, like a dim wave of electricity. Zara stood trembling, but before she could utter a word, her legs buckled. From her ankles down, her skin began to shimmer. No longer human skin, but scales. They gleamed gold, like sunlight on water. Zara's body convulsed, bending in a way that didn't belong to the human world. Her arms vanished into her form as if sucked into a current, replaced by a long, flowing tail that shimmered, woven from moonlight and tears. Aira stepped back, not out of fear, but because in that moment she truly saw beauty. Not the beauty of a monster, but a strange beauty of a soul forced from its body, yet still holding its light intact in its eyes. Zara didn't have time to scream. A greenish glow enveloped her, and her entire form now, a radiant golden mermaid, was lifted from the ground, hovering briefly in the air before suddenly darting out of the hut through the door's gap, as if the Amani River were calling her back. No one saw her disappear. No one heard her plead. Only Aira remained in the hut, now as still as a tomb, her hand still clutching the cold teacup. The scent of herbs lingered, but Zara's presence had drained from the room. Outside, a light rain began to fall. Droplets slid down the thatched roof, pattering like stifled sobs swallowed by the earth. In the days that followed, the palace was in upheaval. Zara did not return. Search parties scoured the region. King Mandala, once a pillar of strength among the people, grew restless and haggard. He neither ate nor slept. Each morning, he went to the Amani River, staring into the water as if waiting for a sign, a trace, a dream. The palace maids wept. The village elders panicked. Rumors began to spread. Kidnapped? Bewitched? Or cursed? Only Ayira remained calm amidst the chaos. Her eyes no longer sparkled as they once did. They were now dark as coal, a light that reflected nothing within. She didn't demand the throne, but when the king withdrew into silence and the elders whispered her name as a temporary replacement, Ayira merely nodded gently. And so, step by step, without anyone's urging, she ascended the stairs of power. Umoja village had a new queen, gentle, attentive, and utterly proper. No one suspected a thing. But the Amani River still flowed, and the children, playing by its banks, sometimes said a golden fish followed them, its eyes sad as if it could speak. In the low-lying village to the south, where red earth mingled with silt to form gentle, sloping terraces down to the water, lived a woman named Nika with her young daughter, Kimi. Their home stood behind a grove of wild banana trees, roofed with dried palm fronds. Its walls cracked by time like Nika's own life, fractured, quiet, and asking no one to understand. Nika was a widow. Her husband had been swept away by the Amani River during a flood season long ago. Since then, she lived quietly, toiling as a hired hand, weaving baskets, gathering firewood, and carrying water in exchange for a few handfuls of corn from the villagers. Though poor, Nika preserved something more precious than gold amidst her hardship, her belief that she must raise her daughter to be a good person, no matter how dark the world might be. Kimi was a special child. She wasn't like the other children in the village. She wasn't afraid of the dark, didn't believe in ghost stories, but believed that every creature had a soul, even the stones at the bottom of the stream. Her eyes seemed to listen to things no one else noticed, the rustling of leaves, the rhythm of the water, and sometimes even whispers from dreams. One morning, as the mist still blanketed the stream and the sunlight had yet to spill into the village, Kimi went to fetch water as she did every day. Barefoot, with a wooden bucket slung over her shoulder on a curved bamboo pole, she softly sang an old folk song her mother used to hum to lull her to sleep. The breeze blew gently, the grass by the stream swayed, and the water was so clear you could see straight to the bottom. As she bent to scoop water, Kimi suddenly froze. Beneath the shimmering surface was a radiant golden fish. Not an ordinary gold, but a glow like molten metal, sparkling as if the sun itself had dissolved into the water. Yet it wasn't the beauty that stunned Kimi. It was the eyes. Not a fish's eyes, human eyes, sad, grateful, and pleading, as if begging for something. For a moment, Kimi forgot she was standing on the bank. She leaned closer, almost touching the water, her heart pounding. The fish didn't swim away or hide. It stayed still, as if waiting to be found. Kimi brought the fish home in an old clay basin. Nika flinched when she saw the strange creature, but then sighed and told her daughter not to harm it. To Nika, every lost being had its own story, She too was a soul that had once been adrift in life. The day passed quietly. The fish didn't eat or flick its tail. It merely turned slowly in the cloudy, golden-tinted water. Kimmy named it Lumi, meaning light, in the ancient language her grandfather had taught her before he passed away. Night fell and the rain came. The seasonal rains, shifting with the wind, carried the scent of decaying leaves and the croaking of frogs like a mournful song. Kimmy lay on a tattered mat beside the basin, her eyes unable to leave the shimmering water glowing in the dark. Then, suddenly, in a moment when the rain quieted as if nature held its breath, a voice burst into her mind, soft, trembling, and desperate. "Help me! I was once human." Kimmy sat up. She didn't know if it was an echo from a dream or a whisper from reality. But she was certain of one thing. This fish was no ordinary fish. It carried a sadness that adults couldn't see. Nika rushed over, finding her daughter clutching the basin tightly, her face not fearful but heartbroken. Kimmy whispered, as if afraid that speaking too loudly would make the voice dissolve like morning mist. "Mama, it's trapped. Someone turned her into a fish." Nika looked at her daughter, then at the fish. She didn't believe immediately, but she believed in Kimmy's eyes. Those eyes had never lied. And if a distorted soul was crying for help through this small form, perhaps it was time for someone to believe. From that night, when the voice echoed in Kimmy's heart, the small house behind the banana grove was no longer the peaceful haven it once was. It wasn't because of the appearance of the talking golden fish, but because of a fragile feeling hanging between the earthen walls, a strange spiritual presence, as if past and future were colliding in silence. Kimmy told no one but her mother. Nika, though seasoned by life, couldn't make sense of what was happening. But one thing she was certain of: the light in the fish's eyes, a light identical to the gazes of the most desperate people she had ever met, could not be false. It was real. And that voice, though faint, was the cry of a soul struggling to escape the depths of oblivion. Nika decided to keep everything secret. No one could know. The curious or greedy must not find out. She carefully shielded the hut, moving the basin of water into the small room, the only one with a window facing the Amani River. Kimmy, meanwhile, sat by the basin each day, talking about school, village life, and the sky. As if, by hearing human stories, the fish might hold on to some remnant of its former self. Then one night, as the wind shifted and thunder rumbled from the foothills of Mount Kaya, a strange scent filled the hut. It wasn't like the smell of the kitchen fire or the familiar aroma of herbs. It was the scent of old incense, of ancient rituals, of nights when ancestors visited through dreams. Nika was the first to wake. She saw the room filled with smoke, but it wasn't harsh or choking. It was opaque, like the breath of 1,000 lifetimes. Through the haze, a figure appeared, an old woman with hair white as ash, skin wrinkled like the bark of an ancient tree, and eyes as deep as if they had witnessed 1,000 lives. She didn't speak with her mouth. Each word seemed to be heard with the heart, a sound that flowed directly inward, bypassing ears and lips. That soul is trapped between two worlds. To save it, a cleansing ritual must be performed. But not here. The woman extended her hand, and in her wrinkled palm, a faint image appeared. The peak of Mount Kaya, where clouds touched the earth and white cotton trees grew in clusters, like the arms of spirits beckoning. There, amidst the wind and ancient roots, grew a plant called soul flower, a species that bloomed only during seasons of fated transitions. Pick 3 leaves of that flower, boil them with water from the Amani River, and remember, only when the king sees the cursed soul will the ritual be complete. If not, 5 days from now, she will dissolve into oblivion. Kimmy woke then too. She didn't cry or fear. She only grasped her mother's hand, and together they watched the old woman fade into the smoke as if she had never been there. But the scent of incense lingered through the night, a wordless reminder. The next morning, without a word, both began to prepare. Nika packed a bundle in an old cloth, a bit of rice, a flask of water, some herbs for fever. Kimmy wove 2 necklaces from wild grass, tying them with red thread from her father's old shirt as a token of luck. Before leaving, Nika placed her hand on the basin, whispering a promise. No one in the village saw them go, for they took the small path behind the swamp, crossing the reed beds and the dirt trail unused since the last flood season. The golden fish, placed in a special leather pouch filled with sacred stream water, went with them, its eyes still following, as if knowing its final chance hung in the balance of time. The wind from Mount Kaya blew against them, carrying dust and dry leaves from countless uncounted seasons. The two, a widow who had lost everything and a child who believed in what no one else did, began a journey not for glory, but for a faint voice that had once risen from the water. While Nika and Kimmy were still making their way across Mount Kaya, no one knew that back in the village they had just left, another wind was rising, carrying the scent of ambition and the sound of greedy footsteps. Rumors, as always, needed no legs to travel swiftly. No one knew where they began, but within a few days, whispers of a talking golden fish that could transform into a human, a reincarnation of a noble soul bound by ancient magic, had reached as far as the region of Abeba, a distant land where wealthy merchants gathered under lychee trees to discuss trade in gold, ivory, and silk. 3 men among them, Malik, Tobe, and Rashan, heard the tale, their eyes suddenly gleaming like molten gold. They didn't believe in magic, much less in legends, but they believed in the value of the extraordinary, and the world out there was still willing to pay a fortune for what others could not possess. Just a fish, Rashan said, his gaze cold as ice. But if it can talk, if it can truly become human, we'll make 100 times the gold we're holding. And so, the 3 men set out on horseback, carrying 2 chests of weapons and 3 empty sacks, 1 for the fish, 2 for the gold they anticipated, heading toward the low-lying village, unaware that the people and the fish they sought had left the day before. When they arrived, the village was eerily quiet. No one knew which fish, which house, but the persistence of men with money doesn't waver easily. They searched, questioned, intimidated. Finally, they stood before the small hut by the banana grove, finding a basin still damp and the faint smell of fish lingering in the earth. They guessed the direction, Mount Kaya. Toby and Rashan grew furious, ready to give chase. But Malik fell silent when he spotted a scrap of red cloth draped over the wall, small, worn, with the clumsy stitches of a child's hand. Embroidered on it imperfectly was the shape of a fish's tail and a tiny flower. He picked it up, and in that moment, a silent wave washed through his soul, a feeling hard to name, both sad and pure. Malik, who had once traded people for gold, stood frozen in the tattered hut. He thought of the children in his own village, of his mother's grateful eyes when he was young, and suddenly felt he was standing on the wrong side. When the 3 caught up with the mother and daughter halfway up Mount Kaya, the sun was already casting long shadows, and mist cloaked the grass and twisted trees. Nika had paused to rest, while Kimmy clutched the leather pouch holding the fish, soothing it as if cradling a fragile dream. Toby and Rashawn wasted no words. They drew wooden clubs and advanced. Nika stepped in front of her daughter, gripping a small jungle knife, meager but resolute. Kimmy held the pouch tightly, whispering as if praying. In her hands, the golden fish trembled faintly, its wide eyes reflecting the crimson twilight like blood. Then Malik stepped forward. He looked at them, then at the fish. The fish's eyes, the eyes of a banished soul, met his like a silent slash. No words were needed, no pleas. Its mere presence was enough to make a man who had chased profit feel his heart suddenly torn open. Malik turned, positioning himself between his companions and the mother and daughter. Rashawn shouted in anger, but Malik didn't budge. He spoke softly, his voice low and hoarse with suppressed emotion. "Don't touch them." A stinging slap from Toba, a punch from Rashawn, but Malik stood firm. As blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, he turned back to Kimmy, giving a slight nod as if to say, "Go." Nika didn't need a second urging. She pulled her daughter, and they plunged into the forest. Their steps heavy as stone, but their hearts lighter than ever, for they had been saved by someone they never expected to stand on their side. And Malik, amidst the blows and curses, kept his lips sealed. Not a word escaped because he knew that some moments, doing the right thing was worth more than a mountain of gold. Deep within the Umoja Palace, once a stage for radiant feasts, time seemed to have frozen since the day Zara vanished. Every marble corridor echoed with old footsteps. Every draft through the doors carried the lingering trace of someone no longer there. King Mandala, once hailed as the Iron Heart of the kingdom, was now a gaunt figure, draped in dragon-embroidered silk, his gaze fixed on an unseen horizon. For weeks, he refused to hold court, refused to eat, refused to see anyone but the portrait of Zara placed in the cold grand hall. A queen who had vanished into nothingness, leaving a palace full of light but devoid of warmth. Meanwhile, on a secret path, threading through the dense forest behind the palace, 3 shadows moved like wisps of smoke. Malik led the way, the wound on his forehead freshly healed. Nika, disguised in an earth-colored robe, the garb once worn by royal healers during purification rites. Kimmy walked between them, clutching the pouch containing the golden fish, its light shimmering through the leather, like a trembling crescent moon amidst hurried breaths. Before an old wooden door leading to the rear palace, a place rarely visited, often forgotten among the paths to the medicinal gardens, Malik raised his hand to signal a stop. He stepped forward, tapping lightly 3 times the code of those who once delivered discreet goods to the palace concubines. No one answered, only the sound of wind slipping through ancient roof tiles. The door opened, and in that moment, all sound seemed to train from the space. They stepped inside. It was a small side chamber, not grand, but still carrying the scent of old incense, faded brocade, and ceramic jars holding spices. Malik paused. He could go no further. His eyes rested on Kimmy, and in place of a farewell, he gave a slight nod, a silent wish. Nika and her daughter moved toward the main hall, where Mandala sat motionless, like a statue. He didn't turn at the sound of footsteps. He had heard too many hollow steps from those who came bearing false hope. But this time, something made him glance back. Not a voice, but a strange warmth seeping through the cold walls. And he saw it. A basin of clear water was gently placed on the rug. Within it, a golden creature swam slowly. No sound, no music, only light, a light blending moonlight and breath radiating in ripples around the fish's form. But what gripped him wasn't its brilliance. It was the eyes. Those eyes had once looked at him as the city crumbled in the rain. Those eyes had shed their first tear on his shoulder during their wedding night. And now, those eyes, silent, unpleading, gazed at him with all that remained of a tormented soul. Mandala stood, no longer regal, no longer commanding. He was just a man lost in his own heart, now finding what he had lost. He knelt, wordless, his trembling hand reaching to touch the water. In that moment, the water rippled, not violently, but as if an ancient song rose from the depths of time. Light surged, enveloping the golden fish like a warm embrace, lifting her from the water. And from that misty glow, Zara emerged, not as she was before. Her hair was longer, tinged with the hue of twilight. Her skin shimmered, not from powder or rouge, but from a light within a light of one who had fought and survived. Stronger, more radiant, like a star that had fallen not to break but to become human again. Zara knelt, silent. Her tears fell, mingling with the dust that had once buried her in the form of a fish, now welcoming her back in her restored body. Mandala didn't shout or weep. He simply stepped forward and held her tightly. In that embrace, he was no longer a king, but a man learning to love again through loss. No one in the palace witnessed it. No trumpet sounded. But it was the most beautiful moment the throne had ever seen. The news of Zara's return struck like lightning across the sky, spreading through the cool stone corridors of the Umoja Palace. Servants whispered to one another, palace maids exchanged startled glances, and the golden curtains in the throne room swayed gently, as if witnessing a miracle history had yet to record. In the Eastern Hall, once the temporary residence of the new queen, Ayira sat leaning back in a red velvet chair, holding an unfinished glass of grape wine. Her eyes, once blazing with triumph, now resembled shattered mirrors, reflecting not glory but a fear she dared not name. She knew, from the first glance when she heard the servants' panicked murmurs, from the icy chill that ran down her spine despite the steady fire in the hearth, Zara had returned, not in a dream, not in a legend, but in her full, vibrant form, more alive than ever. Everything should have ended that night, the night Ayira poured the emerald liquid into the cup and watched Zara drink it dry. The night she believed that, with a whisper and a faint pang of regret, she had erased the only person standing in her way to the throne. But no, the past was not so easily buried as soft earth. And now, it had returned living, breathing, and staring her in the face. In a wordless panic, Ayira fled the palace that very night. No shoes, no guards, only a gold-embroidered cloak, and the sound of her footsteps echoing down the corridor like the tolling of a countdown drum. She returned to the deep swamp where she had first traded her heart for power. Where Mama Juzu, the woman who lived on the misty boundary between the world and the underworld, once held the fates of others like damp playing cards. Smoke rose thickly from a black clay pot, blood-soaked feathers pinned around a stone table like a warning no one dared cross. But Ayira had no time for fear. Darkness was closing in on her, not with chains, but with the weight of shame and the cost of jealousy. Mama Juzu looked at her not with eyes, but with a silence as heavy as a grave. At last, her voice rose, sharp as a barbed thread, threading through Ayira's ears. "You return? To ask for more?" Ayira knelt. Mud seeped through the knees of her cloak. Her lips trembled, not from cold. She pleaded one last time, just once, for a charm to control minds, to make everyone forget Zara forever, to believe Ayira was the true queen. Mama Juzu gave a faint laugh, neither joyful nor sorrowful. She raised her hand, gently spinning a string of dried bone beads before letting them fall. "No more. Your soul is already in pieces. There is nothing left to trade. Aira, frozen for a moment, refused to accept it. She sprang to her feet, snatching a smoldering charm from the ritual table, pressing it to her chest as if desperation could bend fate to her will. But in that moment, the wind fell still. Then a sound like the swamp itself tearing apart. A purple-black light flared, coiling around Aira like tendrils of toxic smoke. A scream ripped through the air. Aira's face began to distort. Not from wounds, but as if layers of a mask were peeled away, revealing what had been buried: envy, greed, fear, and emptiness. Her hair singed, her skin turned ashen, and her eyes, once as beautiful as a sunset, became two bottomless voids. Mama Juzu stood watching, unmoved. No anger, no aid. She only whispered one final sentence. Those who trade their souls must live with the part they offered. Aira did not die. She was cursed to live forever at the bottom of the Amani River, not as a fish, but as a nameless shadow, a being eternally bound to the pain she had caused, with no dreams, no tears, only the echo of jealousy that never slept. From then on, the people said that whenever the Amani River changed its course, the wind howled as if someone were calling out in the darkness. And the children were warned, never go near that stretch of the river at night, lest Aira's shadow whisper a beautiful dream in your ear and pull you down with her. And so, you've just journeyed through a tale filled with tears, buried secrets, and jealousy that can turn into an unerasable curse. But amidst all the darkness, one thing always shines the light of choosing what is right. Zara is not just a surviving soul. She is the embodiment of a woman who knows how to forgive, to love, even after the deepest betrayal. Malik, once a man who turned a blind eye for profit, became a symbol of compassion in the darkest moment. And Kimmy and Nika, two ordinary people, wove a miracle with their unshakable faith. This story reminds us, jealousy is a double-edged sword. It may make you feel powerful for a moment, but it will destroy you forever if you don't know when to stop. And sometimes, the most essential thing is not strength, but faith in what is right. Zara has returned, but will she forgive? Will Aira's shadow linger forever beneath the Amani River? Or will there come a day when she can find redemption? And what awaits in the next chapter? If you want to know what happens in part 2, don't forget, like the video if this story touched your heart, and comment below to share your thoughts, and let me know whether you think Zara should forgive or walk away. And tell me where you're watching from. It's amazing how we can connect from all corners of the world. I'm your storyteller, and if you're still here, I'll keep telling. Part 2 is coming soon. See you soon. In the place where souls have yet to speak their final words,